Oh, let us say good day to you this day of your time. How are you all? All right. All right, thank you. Thank you for the co-creation of this interaction, the allowance of this transmission. This day of your time, this transmission has been titled The Protocols of Contact. We will go through a general list of things that usually happen when we make contact, giving you an overview of all the different stages, all the different phases, all the different steps that are often involved in contacting a new civilization. Now, of course, depending upon the civilization, not every step is always necessary, and sometimes there may be additional steps to take into account the belief systems of the society, the way the society functions, so on and so forth. Nevertheless, this will give you a general idea not only of the phases of first contact that we engage in our society, but it will also give you an understanding of exactly where you are on that schedule. So, we will go through the list. Some things will be self-evident. Some things we will provide a little tiny bit of an explanation for, just to clarify the idea. Nania, with your assistance, please read the first thing on the list.
Okay. Number 1, discovery of the civilization.
All right. Now that's relatively self-evident. We become aware that such a civilization exists and is at a stage where the first phases of communication, connection, and contact can occur. In your case, we understand you've arrived at a place, and have for some time, where you've begun to realize that you may not be alone in the universe, and you begin to send out a vibrational invitation that says you are curious about learning more. And then next?
Observation of the civilization.
We watch, we observe, we measure the energy. This is where you begin to see upsurges in what you call UFO activity around the globe, beginning to take stock of exactly what the situation is on the planet. In your case, of course, we discover that you have different nations, different factions, different kinds of belief systems, and we begin to formulate an understanding of how to relate to the vibrations and reality you have set up for yourselves. And next?
Determine the potential for contact.
Again, in taking all these readings and in assimilating and integrating all the information, we come up with an understanding of the probability for which contact may occur within certain time frames. And next?
If contact potential is high, choose a life or connection in the civilization.
So as we have said, the channel in your linear framework is one of our past lives. We almost always choose a life in the civilization that is ultimately going to be contacted, so that we can, through experience, understand the civilization more deeply, and then be capable of drawing upon that with the future self of that being, which in this case is me. So the idea is also that because we do this, it gives us an ability to understand the references, the idioms, the culture, and allows us to be more relatable, and you more relatable to us. Without this process, without this step, things would take a little longer, because we would be literally too alien to each other, because our society in many ways is very different than yours. And even the small amount of what we have described our society to be is a tiny percentage of the way we actually function. Much of what goes on in our world, in our reality, we haven't even delivered to you yet as information. Nevertheless, we have enough understanding of each other to communicate.
Then you want to design the life to provide necessary elements for future contact.
Yes, so the past life will then go through a pathway, a process that will give them what they need for the purpose of the future communication. And in this case, in the channel's life, there were certain incidents that occurred that prepared the channel to have the ability to do this when the time was appropriate to begin.
Generate sightings and observe reactions and responses.
This is always a fun one for us. Because even though there have been observations taking place, and sometimes you may catch a glimpse of the ships that are doing the observation, now the sightings begin in earnest. We allow you to really see the ships. We really watch and observe and understand the reactions that you have within your societal structure about the existence of our ships, and go from there.
Calculate the timing for various phases of contact.
By then gauging the reaction and responses that we get from all of you by having a slightly closer encounter with our civilization through the viewing of our ships and a few other things and methodologies, we then can begin to see the structure unfold automatically in synchronicity to the general timing as it relates to your society. One of the outcomes of this is the understanding that still remains true at the moment as the highest probability of the window for open contact, which is approximately between your years of 2025 to 2033. That came out of the synchronicity that was the result of the gathering of the information of the reactions and responses to the sightings of our ships.
Guide synchronicity to prepare connection with the individual.
In other words, now that the life is being lived of the past self, we now create an incident moment. For the channel, this was actually the sighting of our ship on 2 occasions. You will see this played out in the film you will be witnessing later, so that you can see exactly how this occurred. But nevertheless, this was the inciting incident that began to propel the channel to consciously begin to investigate, well, as you often say, what the hell is going on? This is not the way we were told the world was. I need to look deeper into this. Which then led him down the path in a more accelerated way to learn what he needed to learn so that when the time came to do the channeling, he would be better prepared.
Initiate connection with connection individual.
So then in the channel, through synchronicity, being guided to go into a channeling class and learn the idea of channeling, not even knowing he was going to become a channel consciously at that point, then the telepathic connection that occurred in that class was the beginning of the real communication, the conscious communication with the channel to allow him to decide for himself whether or not to continue on that path. And so?
Disseminate information over time.
As you are seeing now, that we have done with all of you, bringing through ideas and information into your society to see what you do with it.
Observe reactions and responses to information.
To see what you do with it. And this means to watch whether or not you are capable of remaining within alignment of your own energy and within integrity in your own society in the understanding, application, and utilization of the information. This will tell us a lot about how you will in the future react to more information and whether you're actually ready for it.
Initiate higher level communication with the connection individual.
This means that a blending begins if the individual, that is the past self, is starting to really open up to the idea and understanding of the connection that exists between us in the non-linear sense now, not the linear sense of saying, all right, that's my future self, this is the past self, but in the non-linear sense of understanding higher dimensional perspectives of this connection. For example, the idea that from a higher perspective, we are one and the same soul, one and the same being expressing itself in what you would call 2 different parallel reality time frames simultaneously. Once the channel begins to grasp the idea, once the downloads to the channel begin to filter into his consciousness system, and he starts beginning to view things more 3-dimensionally, 4th-dimensionally, 5th-dimensionally in the way that we do, then there can be a heightened degree of acceleration of the kind of information that can be delivered through that connection individual.
Choose additional individuals to disseminate the information. Thank you, Tadeo. Generate additional sightings to observe any changes in responses.
So again, phase 2 of the sightings, you will find the idea of such things then as the Phoenix lights and all sorts of things that stand out in a very, very powerful way to see again, what does the society do with this? What do individuals do with this? Many individuals began to become very accelerated after that kind of a sighting, although we also notice that the society at large doesn't seem to want to talk about things like that still. But again, this is a general assessment. Obviously, we understand that there are different reactions and different rates of expression around your globe because of the different nations, the different belief systems, so on and so forth. So some parts of your world are willing to acknowledge these things a little bit more openly, and some parts still remain relatively clandestine about these issues and experiences. So again, we take readings to see where you're all at, both individually and collectively, with the more powerful, more blatant, more obvious sightings that are then presented to you.
Generate contact symbols.
This, obviously, such as what you're seeing here as the Sedona vortex array and many other kinds of symbols that are representative of the vibrational frequency of contact, then begin to also be disseminated into your society along with the general information, so that you can kind of have a shortcut version, a condensed version of the information and the energy in these forms as permission slips to help accelerate and see what you're actually attracted to use. Because this, again, your attraction to these symbols tells us a lot about what specific vibrational frequency each individual happens to be on based on what they're attracted to.
Initiate phase-shifted contacts when and where appropriate.
So in other words, this is the upshot of what we have said to many of you, in that while many of you are waiting for contact to happen, contact in many ways has actually occurred face to face. But they usually happen in a slightly shifted reality that is similar to your physical reality, but actually isn't your actual physical reality that you consider to be your normal reality. But then you forget that these things happen, and that serves the purpose of allowing you to remember that these things have already happened at your own pace, and we use the rate at which you remember as a measurement device to determine when you are ready for more conscious realization of contact.
Observe the rate of recall of phase-shifted contacts.
What we just said.
Reassess and disseminate potential timing for open contact.
And again, the window at the moment remains the same, although there may be certain small bubble windows here and there around the world that can be somewhat accelerated to the general window we have given you, depending upon other things that may happen in your society, for example, such as your own discovery that life might exist somewhere off your planet. Whether that means an intelligent civilization or not is not the issue. Just the very idea that you discover for yourselves that life is possible elsewhere other than Earth can change your mindset to help accelerate the idea of contact with other civilizations.
Observe responses to announcement of timing.
Again, by letting you know such things as the probabilities of contact, we again gauge how you respond and react to that, and it adds more information as to whether that window needs to slide up or down, or other things may need to happen with it, or other presentations may need to occur.
Observe any changes in the status of the civilization.
Again, we watch very closely for the kind of things that are going on in the society, and recognize through the positive and the negative expressions an acceleration that determines and lets us know when things are coming to a head, when thresholds are about to be crossed, when major shifts are about to occur within the collective and individual consciousnesses on your planet, so again we can better gauge the timing for contact.
Assist in balancing planetary energies.
The reason that my ship is above the Sedona vortex is specifically for this purpose, of adding our frequency into the vortex that is connected to all other vortices on your planet in a very powerful way, along with other ships over other vortices around your globe, and thus help balance out the energy of these vortices, which then emanate these frequencies so that when you come in contact with them, they help amplify whatever it is you bring into the vortex, and that's both positive and negative. but it's the idea of aiding and assisting with the balancing, blending, and acceleration of the energies globally around your planet to stabilize, ultimately, the energy field of your world and make it more conducive to the idea of open contact, because the vibrational state has to raise and meet us halfway before it will really be a compatible vibration for the level of contact that can occur with many other civilizations.
Generate primary tools of contact.
Again, similar to the idea of the symbols, there are certain things that, depending on the society, then have to happen. So in some societies, as for example is being done now, there are tools of contact that help accelerate the process, such as the documentary you are about to see. This is actually a tool of contact and will have an effect depending upon your responses and reactions to it and the responses and reactions of others around the world. Other civilizations on other worlds may require other kinds of societal cultural expressions, either something like a book or a play or some other form of information or creative expression that will allow them to engage with that tool in a way that will best serve that society to help accelerate the probability of contact.
Initiate filtering of non-compatible states.
This is what we talked about the idea of the splitting prism or the train station where the tracks are going off in different directions, and to make sure that you are aligned harmoniously with the train you want to be on, because it will be more and more challenging to jump the train in the future because the tracks are getting farther and farther and farther apart. In other words, all the frequencies are starting to, in a sense, refine themselves into different streams that are representative of very specific realities. And ultimately, even though you may be able to experience many different kinds of things going on in your reality now, or at very least observe many different kinds of things, including things that are not necessarily vibrationally compatible with your preference, in the future, it will be more and more challenging to witness or experience anything that has nothing to do with whatever vibrational track you chose to be on. So this is simply an encouragement to make sure you're on the correct track, on the correct train that is most harmoniously aligned with your true self.
Become the prime mentor of the contact program.
As we have recently said, my father held the position of the head of the First Contact Council, which has now fallen to me. Because in the idea of being the first contact specialist and the representative to your planet at this time that is primary from my civilization, it has now fallen to me to be in charge of the rest of the program.
You're doing a good job.
Why, thank you. So are you.
Introduce the Contact Council to the civilization.
That's coming up, although you've had a brief glimpse, when my father did in fact communicate through the channel to your civilization relatively recently. But this is the phase you're at now. This is where you fall on that schedule of first contact protocols. You are about to, in the near future, be introduced more clearly to the actual entire First Contact Council, because now that you've arrived at this point, you have to know who they are and they have to know who you are. Ooh.
Accelerate sightings and awareness of life beyond the civilization.
So again, these things are coming up. You're not in this phase yet, but it's approaching sometime within the next few years.
Observe responses.
Yet again.
And then initiate precursor contacts.
We will be talking in more detail about the precursors in an upcoming transmission from your New York area. But the general idea is that there are certain kinds of beings that will elicit certain reactions from you when you are in their presence. And it is those reactions to those beings that we will be watching very closely to really determine how ready you are to actually have extraterrestrial beings walking among you as a matter of course.
So we want to observe the reactions to that, to the precursors. And then we want to initiate isolated physical contact.
Yes. This will start to become a little bit more toward the vibration of your physical reality, where we can begin here and there in isolated places, at isolated moments, the beginnings of the idea of open contact with certain individuals, certain groups that are ready for it at that time.
And you want to expand contacts over time.
Yes, and this will then be entering that window of 2025 to 2033, so that by the end of that window, there will be a general recognition across the entire globe that open contact with extraterrestrial civilizations has actually officially begun.
Initiate final sightings prior to open contact.
Yes, because open contact in the sense of some individuals here, some groups there, so on and so forth, is not the final open contact, which is with every single form of life on your planet, not just you humans. You are an entire system, and to us, open contact with Earth means open contact with Earth, the entirety of the consciousness, in a variety of ways you have yet to imagine, but it's coming.
Hence the need for interspecies communication.
Yes.
Observe responses to the final sightings.
Yes.
And then initiate open contact.
Yes.
And final determination for continuation of open contact.
Because even at that moment, there may be things that people on your planet and whatever civilization we are contacting may make a choice to react negatively to, that we will then filter in and factor into the idea of whether the contact should occur in that way. Now, this may be anything from a slight adjustment to the way contact is occurring to the idea that contact should not continue at all. You will fall somewhere within that spectrum, and at that moment, based on true open contact, that will be determined according to what is truly best for the society and the civilization.
Initiate information exchange.
One of the informational exchanges, as we have recently said, that you would be given in open contact will be the delivery of your entire true history, filling in all the gaps that now exist in your understanding of your so-called past. Such things as true information about Atlantis, true information about your beginnings, true information about other civilizations that have come and gone on your planet, and many other things that you don't actually have recorded in your history right now for a variety of reasons.
Initiate any special procedures.
This will be determined at the time as to what any special procedures might need to be, because that will really be the true beginning of the incorporation and enlistment of your civilization into the interstellar alliance. And we will see what needs to happen for your civilization to allow such a transition to operate as smoothly as possible at that time, whatever your special needs may be at that moment.
Prepare the civilization for interstellar alliance membership.
As we said, this will include many different phases unto itself in going through the idea of becoming a full-fledged member of the Interstellar Alliance, if that's what you wish, which hasn't yet really been fully determined.
And you want to train civilization to discover other civilizations.
Yes, as we have often said, there are other civilizations that are somewhat around the same basic level that you are, and many of them have, in some sense, been left alone because you will become their UFOs. You will be making first contact with them, and we have left them open as your training ground to follow in our footsteps.
Amazing. Guide civilization's initial contacts with other civilizations.
Yes, we will be there to mentor you and guide you along the way so that you will not inadvertently blow up any planets. Just kidding, we think.
Initiate membership in the Interstellar Alliance.
Then you will become full-fledged members after having had some experience with interacting with other civilizations yourself by being the initiators of those first contacts. And that means you have open to you the expanse of the galaxies, of the universe, the sharing of technologies with us and other civilizations, and spanning the stars and truly becoming Homo Galacticus.
Initiate specific programs relevant to the new member.
Yes, you have your strengths, and therefore many different kinds of programs from your membership in the Interstellar Alliance will take advantage of what it is you bring to the Interstellar Alliance that is unique to you. Because it is all of that diversity that we cherish. It is all of the strengthening of the individual society that you are that will add to the unification and harmony of the Interstellar Alliance by letting you really express the strengths and the uniqueness of your being.
And finally, continue relations with experienced member civilization.
Yes, at that point you will be considered an experienced member civilization. And there are many, many, many things, many opportunities, many different kinds of experiences that then can be opened up to an experienced member civilization that, again, right now, may be far beyond what you imagine membership would actually be. But you'll be able to explore at that time many different kinds of things that go beyond any of the so-called science fiction scenarios you've gotten used to about what it means to actually be a member of an alliance. It goes way beyond that. And goes way deeper inside your consciousness than you may know. And so then.
And so I did have a question.
Yes?
When you mentioned about the final determination for continuation of open contact, or even earlier, isn't
Yes.
there another time where it's assessed whether or not a civilization will go forward with contact or not?
Yes, but we always at the later time offer the opportunity for the civilization to make a final assessment.
And once you shared about the percentages of civilizations that actually go beyond that stage,
Yes.
what was that?
The idea in general is that, let's say, on average, about 75% of the civilizations we have contacted will actually opt to continue for membership, but some don't.
What are some of the reasons that they don't?
They may find that in their own estimate, once they have become unified enough because of the contact, because they're now looking at things very differently, they may find that they've decided that they are going to create a unique and different destiny for themselves. And we will certainly allow them to do so and go off and find out whatever they need to find out on their own without necessarily becoming a member. In other words, it doesn't mean that they won't necessarily interact with us. They just won't necessarily be acting as an official member of the alliance. They would be acting more as an independent stellar nation.
Okay, great.
That would be one reason. There are many others, but that would be one. Does that help?
I think it does.
All
Does
right.
it help
Does that
everybody
clarify
else?
things? All right. Now you know where you are in the program. You can now take a pin and go, you are here. And here is the upcoming calendar of things that are coming up in the future. So it gives you some sense now, and this is actually an important exercise. It gives you some sense of how far you've come, because you're not that far from the end of the list in general. And therefore you can see that you're progressing in the context of this idea, and you can see that there really isn't that much yet remaining for you to really accelerate forward into the idea of expanding in the way that we have just described. So we thank you for being willing to move forward in this way up to this point with us and other civilizations, because again, you are family. And the idea of reawakening family members so they can rejoin the family and welcoming them home is of great joy to us. So thank you. Then in return for that gift that you are now giving to us, we ask, in what way may we continue to be of service to you? Please begin with your questions and dialogue if you wish.